So Rob, we're here at the Rothesay buildings in London. Looking back at that first test, how satisfying was it over 5 days of hard, gruelling test cricket?
I thought it was a brilliant test match. Sport's always better, isn't it, when you're not sure of what's going to happen. Maybe not so my job, where you just like to know what the result would be. But it was a proper roller coaster. I think that the quality of the cricket was incredible. The standard of batting, bowling on that pitch, it's the sort of wicket where a lot of people think that, actually the bowlers aren't doing much here. Well, I tell you what, I thought they bowled brilliantly. On the fastest outfield I think I've seen, the way they kept coming, I thought that was an unbelievable effort.
I know on the panel there you said you were quite nervous, but there was a sense of calm from the dressing room. Even in that period they lost 2 wickets and 2 balls. It just felt quite routine for England to knock it off now.
Yeah, I think that the surface was good and they have belief. That's the main thing. Confidence is like a superpower, and the way that Crawley and Duckett started was key. That's a brilliant bowling attack that they were up against, and I think nearly every time I saw those two bat, it seemed to have the lights on, which makes it tougher. But I thought they played brilliantly and they set the game up. And then it was a question of just go out there and play as if it's the first day of a test match. It's a good pitch. There's the opportunity to go out there and get some runs, and that's exactly what they did. Finished by Joe Root and Jamie Smith, who are as calm as any players I've seen, I think.
Another 100 for Ben Duckett at the top of the order. Where does he now rank amongst the best all-format openers?
I've always felt, I saw that sort of being touted around, but I've felt for a while now that Ben Duckett's been one of the best batters in the world in all formats. I mean, Jaiswal's obviously a fantastic player, but doesn't play T20 as much for India. But Ben Duckett's been, outstanding. He's done it in his way. That's the thing. So often in English cricket, we sort of look at everyone else and think, but Ben Duckett's been able to go, this is the way I play, I'm just going to get better at that. And I think that's what really, really good players do, and Ben's done that. It's a tough place to bat as an opener, but he stayed true to the way that he wants to play, and he's just got better and better, and he's now, I think, starting to realise himself how good he is.
And that authenticity, does that sum up sort of Ben Duckett's approach, sum up the sort of team as a whole? It's quite an authentic team. Stokes does it his way, Baz does it his way. Anyone can do it their way, really.
Yeah, but that's the skill of the leadership. That's the skill of Ben and Brendan, is that we try and pick as a group, we try and pick the most talented players we can. And then it's to allow them to go out there and fulfil that potential and play to their best of their ability. And that's easy to say, it's not easy to do. And Ben and Brendan have created like a belonging and an atmosphere that allows people to feel they can do that, which is so special to be involved with.
Did we see a more refined England team this test? Because Ben Duckett came out and said it was important in that day 4 evening not to lose a wicket, to see off the bowlers, whereas before you might be positive and lose a couple more wickets in the evening session. Have we seen like a development, a more mature side to this England team?
I think certainly this year, we've had a bit of a break, and you try and work how you're going to evolve, and that's one of the ways you try and evolve, really. And I think it's down to each individual to work out what their role is in doing that and the way they did it. We've always been that you go out there, your decision as a batter is whether you got to be able to put bowlers under pressure, and you've also got to be able to soak it up. And the key is making that decision, what to do at the right time, and I'd say that they got that spot on, certainly those 2 openers. Sometimes it will be to throw counter punches, as Harry Brook did. You think that, is he going to hang in against Bumrah? He started running at him. And you've got to trust that they'll make the right decision more often than not.
And are we at a stage now where we're seeing as much clarity as we ever have with this test side under Ben and Brendan? You see the top 7, we know who the top 7 are, we know who the bowling attack are for the most part, we know what their roles are. Are we seeing as much clarity as we ever had?
That's up for everyone else to decide. We've always sort of known a little bit about the way we want to go, and the players that have come in, we've had them, they've been on our radar for a long time. They've come through a system, through county cricket, through Lions cricket, which is so important. So we've always had an idea of which way we want to go, and as I said, confidence is the superpower that every team is searching for, and at the moment they're confident. There'll be some seriously tough tests to come, as I'm sure they will in the next one at Edgbaston. So, you never want to speak too soon about clarity and all that.
One of the themes of sort of your leadership group with yourself, Ben and Baz, is that you've done it your way. You've put tradition aside. You've picked players off highlights clips on Twitter, for example. So what is it about this group where someone like Shoaib Bashir can come in and thrive. Someone like Jamie Smith can come in and thrive. So many other people can come in and thrive.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, you know, like the clips that we see are after probably a hell of a lot of work that have gone through. We've got a whole scouting network. We've got a whole analytics. We've just supercharged our analytics with partnering with a company that does it as well as anyone in the world. So, you know, as much as we see the finished article, there's a hell of a lot of work and a hell of a lot of work by some people behind the scenes that do that. But, you know, like often when you see really talented players, you don't need to see them for long. And Shoaib Bashir, you know, I thought he bowled so well in that Test match. So on that outfield that was electric against a team like that, you know, he almost doesn't get as much credit as he deserves, because I thought he bowled brilliantly. And, you know, that's a credit really to Ben and Brendan and what they do and the confidence in which they give them. You know, it's all about making someone feel like they belong in that environment and that level, and they've managed to do that with Shoaib, who's a brilliant talent, and getting better. It's so exciting to see where he can go.
And as a leadership group, how important is it to stick to your principles and not listen to the outside noise and maybe get influenced by that? A prime example, Eddie Jack, he's only played first-class cricket for Hampshire this week, but you see a plan in Eddie. He's played Lions cricket. How important is it for you to just stick to what you know and not let the outside influence you?
I think that's quite important, because that's what we're paid to do, really. You know, otherwise you may as well not have any of us and just go on what the speculation is. But when you look, the speculation is there's always lots of different opinions. So we just try and stick true to the people we think, you know, are seriously talented and have an ability to go and win us a few games. And I think it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that.
And Jofra's back into the squad. I've heard a lot of questions fielded on Jofra. A lot of them are they too... Do you think we're just too cautious and rather thinking about what could go right rather than what could go wrong? How exciting is it to have it more on a personal level for Joff, because he's been through a lot over the last 4 years, just to see him now back in the Test side?
I think it's so exciting, because he could be one of the best bowlers. You know, he's one of the best bowlers I've seen play for England, and he's had such a tough few years. And hopefully there's a lot of bowlers that when they have a lot of time out for injury, you look back in 3 or 4 years when they start playing and they end up missing no cricket. So hopefully, touch wood, that'll be Jofra. But, you know, that's it. The brain hates uncertainty. Like, you know, and you always have that thing where, and I've been in selection meetings where, yeah, but at least we know what we're going to get from that person. It might not be as great as someone else, but at least we know. You know, they won't let us down. Whereas I tend to think like, you know, what could they do? You know, what's their top end? How good is their good? And Jofra's good is as good as anyone's.
And I know in an Ashes year in particular, it's probably not great to take inspiration from an Australian, but you look at Pat Cummins, who had so much time out in his 20s and now seems to have been fit and healthy for the last few years. Is that what you're hoping now with Joff?
Well, I say one thing, that all the sort of research and all the studying that our guys have done into bowling is that's what happens, right? Up to the age of 23, people go through a lot of injuries, and it can be different for other people, but they then get to a point where their robustness, when they can play consistently enough, then they get that robustness, right? I worry more when bowlers aren't playing. You know, I think they need to, you don't want to flog them, and we've got to make sure we don't do that with Jofra. But the more they play, like Broad and Anderson, there's no one who's more of a credit to the system than Broad and Anderson. Jimmy, who was still playing now, you know, and been touched with injury-free because of the amount that he's played. He's bowled more than anyone, not less than anyone, and that's the key. And hopefully we can start that in the next few weeks, whenever it is, and Jofra can start on that road. That would be exciting to see.
And just finally, has all the few years you've been in a role been building up to this 12 months now, you have a settled top 7, you have so many bowling options to pick from. Is it no coincidence that now in a big year for English cricket you've sort of reached where you want to be?
I don't know if we've reached where we want to be, but you're just trying to sort of produce the best environment, the best players, the best team you possibly can, no matter what's coming for you, you know. And it just so happens that we're at this stage at the moment, but we still can evolve from here, and I think that's important.